Okay, so we're going to start today by looking at our skull, and there's a lot of detailed ways to do this. I don't want us to do this like a forensic artist would do this, but I do want to point out that most of the stuff I'm showing you or hacking through comes from Ryan Kinsling's facial anatomy workshop that I bought years ago. We're going to hack through it. Really what he does is he puts the facial markers on here. You know the depth and everything. We're just going to fake that for now. But I want to make sure that we're all understanding there's more to it. And if you want to look it up, you can look up Ryan Kingsley's Kingsleyan and facial animation, or facial anatomy. I mean, you'll find a bunch of stuff. He's been doing this forever. He's really, really, really detailed in the muscle structures and everything. And this website actually, there's a website that has a link to a bunch of the free ones that are kind of primers for the video. The actual videos are on. The one I have are from UArtsy, but there's even newer ones out. But I think the website that we used to have them is gone. Anyway, let's just go back and let's set this up. First thing we want to do is I'm going to show you how to set up a picture in the background, but not the way we did it before. So let's clear out that picture. Let's get rid of that skull first. So I'm going to come into documentation, or I'm sorry, draw. I'm going to come down to my front back, and I'm going to say click on that and say texture off. And then I'm going to come down to my left, right, click on that and say texture off. I'm not worried about it because we're not really using that anymore, but I just wanted to put that in there so you can get rid of it and not get confused. We're going to use, this time, we're going to use what are called inside of our texture menu. If we click on this, jumps our texture over, we're going to use what are called add spotlights. So we actually use this for texturing and sculpting at some points, but we'll get to that maybe next class, next semester. But for now, what we'll do is we'll click on texture and we'll go inside import, and I have a place where there's a couple of textures, and I'm going to look at these two. I don't really want these two. I'm going to keep them off to the side. But they actually give me the facial map and the text and the names of every muscle. I'll throw them in there, but there's not going to be a test on it. Don't worry about it right now. Let's just grab this one. This is from his model animation. And we'll throw it in there. And then what do we do? Well, then we come over here and we click on it. And then we say this will light up now. And then we say add to spotlight. And it pops up. Now, I'm going to get into spotlight with you some other time. But really all we want to do is drag this sucker up over here. Maybe to that size right here. Maybe even only half because it's mirrored. We want to get a good view of this image, but we don't necessarily need to have it there. Now, by default, if I take this and I push Z, now when I sculpt, it uses that texture is actually a sculpting plane. So we don't want that. So we're going to take this, we're going to move it up out of the way. Now, if it's up out of the way, it's still, oh, wrong one. Let's see, there we go. If we move that out of the way, it still could bump into it by accident or whatever. That's totally true. And we can also make it more transparent if you want by going to opacity and turning it down. We want to kind of keep it visual here. But we're going to push Z so it's active. But then what we have to do is come over to our brushes, which I think I have here, yeah, brush. And then we're going to come to samples and we're going to turn off spotlight projection. And now when I sculpt inside of here, it doesn't care that that thing's there anymore. Okay? I'm just using it as an image reference. I don't need it behind it, to the side of it and all laid out, but I definitely want to have it in the scene for me to look at. So let me pull up some of these pictures here just on my side here. I'm pulling up this one. It's okay. This one's artistic. A lot of these curves aren't right. Anyway, like I said, we're going to hack through this. We're really not planning on making this exactly right. I'm not going to make you guys know the frontalis or the zygomatic major and zygomatic minor. We are going to put them in there, or the levator labii or superius, or the levator labii superius aquilius nasi, which is the one that curves right there. We're not going to have that naming convention and stuff, so just don't stress on that. We'll get to it. We won't ever get to it in this class, and maybe not in the other ones, but it is out there and you should probably know it. I don't memorize the names anyway, so. Okay, so the first thing I do when I do a head, if I'm going to do it from a skull, which honestly I don't always, but I want you to understand this so you can look at it, is I throw a sphere in there, and I'm going to say, we're going to throw a sphere in there for the eyes. So we just come down to our insert, click on polymer sphere, and then we'll scale it down and up. Turn it sideways. If you turn this button on right here, it makes what you're working on solid and what you're not working on transparent. Makes it a lot easier in some ways. So I'm going to grab this down, drag it into there, and then I'm going to scale it until I get it inside the eye socket that I've made. I keep pulling it and pull it down. Okay. Now, since we don't actually have a real head that we kind of base it off of loosely off a couple of models, but we're going to just work with it the way it is. So I'm going to take this. If this was a character class, I would focus on making you guys memorize the names of the muscles. But we want it less than the socket, okay? And we want it a little bit shallower than that, I think. But kind of centered, has an edge around the whole thing. And then we're going to take it and go WW just to change to my move tool. And then I'm going to come down to my mirror and weld. And where's the mirror and weld again? It's inside my geometry menu, inside my modify topology, mirror weld. So I'm going to mirror weld, and it'll put me 2 eyes right there. So we're done with the eyes. Now let's talk about how we're going to put these muscle structures onto the face. We're not going to sculpt them as tightly as he is, because we're just going to use some of his techniques to get to where we want. Okay. So what we do to do this is actually pretty simple. We just grab this head here. Let me go back to the skull. And then I'm going to go ahead and use my control button and pull it out to about where I think that muscle up here is going to be. And if I set this up, so this muscle. Oops, that's not the right one. This muscle. Okay, so that's where I do that. All right, so, and that's about the right length, and they're touching a little bit, and that's probably fine. I think it's too much inside here, so I'm going to pull that off. It doesn't really matter, I guess. Yeah, it doesn't matter. And here's the thing. We're going to look at this thing right here. There's actually a couple muscles that build into this too, on top of this muscle, these things, and I'm going to say that's fine. We're going to separate them out, but we're not going to make them like crazy, like every muscle's correct, like I've been saying. So I'm going to pull this out a little bit.